Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. This will be our seventh event. I can't believe how fast the year is going past. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Bacola. Everyone calls me B, and I am one of the co-founders of Excellerate Black Futures. And I'm really excited about this session. Before I dive in, just to remind you, this session is being recorded. So just wanted to make you aware that it is being recorded and will be available on YouTube after the session. Like I said, welcome. This session I'm particularly excited about, and I'll tell you a little bit why after, but just to give you a bit of an intro into Excellerate Black Futures, if this is the first event that you're joining, welcome. Just to talk to you about what we're about and what we're focusing on. Our big focus is really on young Black professionals. So we're here to enhance the narrative around that and provide development opportunities for young Black talent. And really, we do this in a few ways. So a few pillars that we hinge this on is educating young Black talent, equipping them with knowledge and expertise. Very keen to inspire confidence. So you'll notice that our events, we invite a lot of Black talented career professionals and allies to come and inspire us about their career highs and lows and tips on how they've got to where they've got to. We're very keen on practical tools, so things that you can take away, make notes, and actually, practice in your careers. And we're really keen on giving back. So as you're rising through the ranks, making sure you're giving back and providing other opportunities for other young Black talented individuals to accelerate in their careers as well. So we do this in a few ways. So we've got a few bespoke partnerships that we'll be talking a bit about later on in the year, but we're very, very big on online engagement. So we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, we have scale-up events, of which this is one of them. And our flagship program is our group talent program. So it's a 6-week program, which we're just in the makings of turning into a virtual program, so people can have access to this in their own time. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the year. But our scale-up events are two-pronged. So we've got one around educational series. So like I said earlier, we're very big on practical tips in educating people in terms of what they can do in their careers. So we have every other month an educational series, of which this kind of straddles both educational and inspirational, because you will take quite a few practical tips away, but we do have inspirational events as well, where, like I said, we get young Black professionals who are killing it in their careers, or we have allies come and talk to us about what they've done in their careers to get to where they've got to. If you haven't been to any of our events, all of them are recorded, bar one. They're all on our YouTube channel. So that will go out after the session. So do make sure that you hop on there and have a look through if you haven't already. Now, I will dive straight through to what we're here to talk about today. So we're talking about making strategic career moves, and I can't be more excited to introduce the other co-founder of Excellerate Black Futures. I met Winnie whilst we both worked in the financial industry, and she's got over a decade of experience in HR. She's worked in the business. She's got leadership scale experience, so she's been killing it in her career. She's won several awards, so she's currently, her cape during the day is a D&I specialist, and she's won several awards for that, but she's also won awards like the Black British Business Award or the We Are the City Award. So check her out on LinkedIn, you'll be able to see a lot about her. But I think the most exciting thing about her is obviously that she's co-founding Excellerate Black Futures with me, and we've got lots and lots of things planned for everyone. So without further ado, I will hand over to you, Winnie, to take us through the session today.
Thank you so much, Bee. That was such a lovely introduction. Just to check, can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Does it sound good? Perfect. Fantastic. We're good to go. Thank you so much, Bee. And thank you all so much for taking the time on your Monday evenings to spend time with us. We're really, really excited to have another session with you all today. Like Bee said, it's a bit of an inspirational stroke educational session this time round. And we're really big on providing practical tools, like Bee said. So hopefully you'll be able to take some notes in the session and take some very practical tips with you that will help you to make more strategic career moves. Usually this is the time when I go into my career background a little bit and share kind of my career story. But I will save that for later on in the session, because the session is designed to hopefully share some hints and tips before we delve into what that looks like for my own career and some of the things that I've learned to do really well and continue doing, and also some of the things that I've done that have not quite worked out. So I've done those things and made those mistakes so that you don't have to, and hopefully I can share some really practical tips on how to avoid some of the pitfalls that I have alongside my career as well. So delving straight in, our objective for the session will be, one, giving you an overview of what career moves look like when you're looking from a strategic lens. Like I said before, I'll share my career story, but I'll also share some really practical next steps on what you can do when you leave the session today to help you really amplify your career and turn it into something that you're really passionate and excited about achieving. So, like I said, straight in, what is a strategic career move? It's simply a deliberate career decision or a change that allows you to grow your knowledge and experience, bolster your resume, and advance your career. Now, of all the words I've said, probably the one that I will focus on the most is deliberate. Now, many of us would have made career moves at different points, some of us more frequently than others, and we'll explore that a little bit more. But I think the important thing to note here is deliberate. Strategic career moves are about taking ownership of your career, driving your career, and being the CEO of your career. And for those who joined us in our session last month with the Career Intelligence Academy, essentially this session will be building on from that, but don't worry if you missed it. There'll be some nuances that we'll also pick up here just to give you a bit of a refresher as we go through. But essentially, this is all about learning to take ownership, strategic direction for your career, and feeling like you're in the control seat. And that's what strategic career moves are all about. Now, we're going to dive straight into do's and don'ts. What does strategic career planning look like, and what does it not look like? So first of all, it's about having a clear and intentional career plan. What does my career look like in 3 years? What does it look like in 5 years? And what are the steps that I need to make between the next 6 months to the next 3 years to make that happen? And it's not about making career moves because of emotions or feelings. I know we've all been there. I really don't like my boss. My job is very boring. I can't wait to leave. But that's not what career decision making is. It's not about sentiment. It's not about emotions. It's not about feelings. It's about making really strong, clear, and intentional moves to help you to achieve a desired outcome in your career. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like as we go on. It's about making decisions. Now that sounds so simple. Everybody thinks, sure, career, let's make decisions. But for many of us living out our careers, we know that it's not as easy as that. Sometimes it can be very difficult to decide between different options, maybe different job offers, different pathways. But strategic career planning is all about actually taking control and making decisions rather than allowing those decisions to happen to you. It's not about making people make decisions on your behalf or asking your mentor, what do I do? It's about seeking those perspectives to influence your decision, but ultimately it's about you owning that decision and driving your career yourself. It's also about communicating your career intentions with influential stakeholders. So I believe there's a famous quote that says, if you want to go far, if you want to go fast, you can go by yourself. If you want to go far, you go with others. I believe that there are so many ways that people can help us with their strategic career decisions, and they can be a really big catalyst for helping you go a long distance. So it's about communicating those intentions with the individuals who can help you and making sure that you are clear with them around what that looks like. And it's not about hiding your dreams and aspirations from others. I think sometimes hiding your dreams or not being clear about them can sometimes come from a place of imposter syndrome. I've heard some people say things like, Winnie, I'm not a grade chaser. I'm not chasing the next grade. Actually, it's okay to want the next grade. It's okay to be ambitious. It's okay to really want to succeed. But making sure that you communicate that with people who can help you is a really big step in making that strategic career move, because they'll understand what you need and be able to meet you and support you to get there. It's also about preparing for future opportunities. So understanding actually what is my next career move and what's the next one after that. For those who came to our session on LinkedIn visibility, Dr. Glory said something so important. She said, LinkedIn is not about the job that you currently have, it's about the job you want. So essentially, when you're planning your career strategically, you want to think not just about where you are, but more strategically what your next couple of moves are and how they help you to meet your goals. And in doing that, it's not just waiting for opportunities to arise, it's taking that ownership and preparing. So in some cases, it might be formal education. In other cases, it might be maybe small courses, LinkedIn learning, maybe shadowing, seeking coaching. There might be different ways that you can prepare yourself, but it's about taking those deliberate steps, like I said before, and not waiting for those opportunities to arise. It's also about proactively positioning yourself for those opportunities. So a lot of people don't know this, but most hiring managers typically know or have an idea of what type of person they want to hire before they go out to advertise the role. So positioning yourself in the kind of places that you want to be in helps to prime yourself and enables you to build the right relationships to be able to get ready for when the opportunities come. Sometimes waiting for the job to be advertised is actually too late because, like I said before, in a lot of cases, there are people who are already priming themselves, making those relationships so that when the roles come up, they are there and have built those relationships with those stakeholders. So making sure that you're positioning yourself is really important. It's also about reviewing progress regularly. So creating a strong career plan and actually making sure that you're reviewing the milestones of your plan and not just forgetting about your plan. I know many people who will write a great, beautiful career plan, lots of highlighting colors, and just chuck it in their handbag and don't look at it again. That's not what career planning is about. Strategically managing your career is about reviewing your progress regularly and thinking about where you are now, where it's supposed to be, where you're supposed to be, and whether or not you need to take new steps or reviewing and pivoting as you need to go along. It's also about doing primary and secondary research. So a lot of people, when you're applying for roles, might look at maybe the company's website for more information, but this is about making sure that you're speaking to people who work in those companies that you want to work for, speaking to people who are doing those jobs, looking at news articles. So really finding a balance between looking at stuff that's available online or through secondary resources, but also primary resources to validate what you're learning. But ultimately, it's not about making blind decisions. You shouldn't just put your finger up in the air and say, you know, this job sounds great, I'm going to go for it. It's actually about being a bit more intentional than that. It's also about looking at your existing strengths and opportunities. A lot of people actually look at roles from a place of their development areas. I don't qualify for this because I only meet, 5 out of 10 of the criteria. But actually starting from a place of strength and building on those strengths to help you to identify pathways where you can build on your strengths and grow is a really great opportunity and a catalyst to grow your career from there. But also looking at your career holistically. You'll see when I share my career story that I don't just talk about my career in the context of jobs that I've done. It's important that you look at your whole life, side hustles, intrapreneurship, look at your family situations, your personal circumstances. How does that influence the career decisions that you make? And don't look at your jobs in isolation because actually that can really limit your lens. I also think another way that it limits your lens is that it stops you from looking at the skills you have holistically as well. Companies are not just interested in the skills that you're able to build in previous jobs. They also want to know that you're building skills and capabilities that are outside of that. So how do you look holistically at the different ways that you can build that? And I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then finally, motivating yourself. Now, this career planning lifestyle is not easy. People who have really strong careers that they're passionate and successful in do not get there overnight. It takes a lot of knockbacks and really picking yourself up after rejections, after things not working out, breakdowns in relationships, org structure changes. There's so many hurdles that you might have to overcome along the way, but really motivating yourself and surrounding yourself with people who can motivate you is what strategic career planning is all about. And we'll talk about that later on. I will pause here to say that we will have time for Q&A. So if you have any burning questions, please pop them in the chat. And I'll make sure that we ring fence some time later on to have a look at those. So the first thing that we all need to think about is whether or not we're in the driving seat. Now, I'm going to start by emphasizing the fact that whilst strategic career planning is all about taking ownership of your career, there's nothing bad about taking advantage of opportunities that come along. But this is more about awareness and understanding where you are. So there are essentially 3 types of career ownership journeys. And I know we talked about this in the June session for those who joined us, but the first is career driver. Essentially, it's about knowing where you're going and how you're going to get there. And I think that if you want to plan your career strategically, this is probably where you want to be majority of the time if you can help it, because being in control is really what helps you to make sure that you're tracking in the right way. However, there are a couple of other paths. So the second is career passenger, which is all about allowing your career to be managed by your boss or your company, being carried by the momentum of the organization or the environment around you, and waiting for opportunities to come to you. Now, in some cases, that's actually okay. I've worked over the last few years in quite a large organization, and I've seen the benefit of some organizational changes and how they've benefited my career. And like I mentioned before, there is no right answer, but there might be times actually that you might move in between the different career pathways. But being in the career driver's seat, even if you end up as a passenger to some of your organization's decisions, just helps you to maintain control and understand how any decision that happens across stakeholders that you can't influence at least helps you to understand actually what does that mean for my career? What does that mean for my plan? And how do I pivot in a way that helps me to get to where I need to go and not be derailed? And then the third is hitchhiker, which is about waiting for your career to happen, not being sure where you want to end up. And in some cases, there are some people that this works out for, and we'll talk about different career pathways shortly, because in some cases, it works out for some. And like I said, there is no wrong answer. However, like I said before, depending on what your career plan looks like and where you want to be, where your ambitions, you'd like your ambitions to take you, really thinking about noticing when there are points where you're just waiting for opportunities to happen, and think about whether or not you should be taking more of a driving seat at different points in time to help you to get to where you're going to. Actually, before we move on, I'd like to do a little bit of a poll if this works. So I'm going to ask you to select which of these currently reflects where you are right now on your career journey. So if you think that you're more of a career driver right now, click the career driver option. If you're a bit more of a passenger, then click the passenger option. And then if you're more of a hitchhiker, press the hitchhiker option. We'll just give it a minute to see a few responses coming through. We'll just give it a couple more minutes or seconds maybe. Okay, I think we'll end that poll there. So it looks like we've got a really big mix there, so I'll just share it if I can. So we've got about 48% in the career driver seat, which is great to hear, 48% in the passenger seat, and then 5% in the hitchhiker seat. So the great news is if you're more passenger or hitchhiker and you'd like more support, you're in the right place. But like I said before, it's more about awareness than whether or not you're in the right place or not. So we'll keep talking about what that means. So like I mentioned before, there are different approaches to career moves. Now, this is a very important thing to be aware of, because I think it also depends very much on what industry individuals are in and what type of work or career aspirations you have. So the first is the expert, which is all about career or your job being something that you do for life. It's about mastering competencies in depth and being an expert in your field. And a lot of people who want to be the expert are usually motivated by job security, expertise, long-term commitment and dedication to whatever it is they're doing. And in a lot of cases, these people like to specialize. So you might see a lot of people in the expert field, perhaps in the tech industry, with very specific tech, competencies and skills that they build on and continue to become experts in their fields at. And sometimes you might see that these individuals work really hard at industry expertise, being known in the field for what they do, being one of very few people who maybe know how to use a piece of software or experts in that field, and usually are motivated by refining their skills, recognition for being really good at what they do. Linear typically tends to be the one that's talked about the most and therefore seems more popular, but is essentially about moving upwards. And a lot of people who generally approach their careers in a linear fashion typically don't look at how long they stay in their job for. They stay as long as it makes sense and are motivated more by advancement. So how do I get to the next stage of the career ladder early on? And I mentioned before that a lot of people who say, I'm not chasing a grade, I'm not chasing a corporate title, actually in a lot of cases, it's okay to say, I am being linear in the way that I look at my career. I want to progress really quickly, and I'm not ashamed in that. And these individuals are motivated by promotions, bonuses, leadership opportunities, and the like. We then have the spiral, which I would proudly say has probably been the one that resonates the most with me. And it's about essentially taking on new career decisions and choices that enable you to build new competencies. And these individuals are usually motivated by personal development, creativity. They're all about diversity, teamwork, innovation, which for those who know me knows that that's all true. And, you know, it's all about job rotation, creating opportunities to do different projects, and having freedom and growth in the way that they approach their careers. And then the final one is transitory, which is someone who would usually be in a job for 2 to 4 years, and likes to change to new unrelated jobs, organizations, or fields every once in a while, and are motivated by variety, independence. They're all about flexibility, they're all about networking, and they're motivated by independence, which I think is really interesting. So I think for you guys, starting to think about where do I fit in that field? But I also think there's another question that's worth asking yourself when you look at this model, which is, what does my career look like when I look at these four? So for example, some careers might require you to have deep expertise. So in which case, maybe taking the transitory approach may not always be the right one for succeeding in that field, because your peers and competitors who are looking for the same types of roles might be experts in that field. And the same might be vice versa. There might be some organizations looking for people who do have different skills and competencies, and therefore having expertise in one field may not quite work. In some cases also, you might work in an organization that has quite a flat structure. So if you like linear growth, maybe not having many layers of progression might be a challenge. So it's important not just to look at this from the lens of yourself as a person, but also looking at it from the lens of the fields that you want to work in, the career choices you want to make, and the organizations that you want to work for, and whether or not they'll support the way that you approach your career. Like I mentioned before, I would reference last month's session, and for those who were with us last month, we were with the Career Intelligence Academy, who talked about wearing 4 different hats when it comes to your career. So the first is the CEO hat, which is all about owning your career and driving it. The CFO hat, which is all about measuring your impact and your success, and also working with different stakeholders who would help you to understand the impact that you're making. The CMO hat, Chief Marketing Officer, which is all about managing your brand, your influence, and what people are saying about you. Your CIO hat, which is your Chief Information Officer, and looking at how you're developing yourself. And then we've also got the COO hat, which is all about working smarter and not harder, and making sure that you're delivering value. Now, I won't go too much into detail with all of these, but I think the important thing to note here is there is a really good free tool that is available from the Career Intelligence Academy, which enables you to assess which of these you're paying more attention to. So to give you an example, being a CFO, wearing the CFO hat enables you to measure your impact and see the value that you're adding and how your stakeholders perceive you getting there, which is a really great skill to have. But then equally, the CMO hat helps you to manage your visibility. So being able to wear all of those hats interchangeably at the right points in your career really helps you to be able to kind of, I guess, think more strategically about the decisions that you're making and how you're priming yourself for those opportunities that will come up. So my career story, I think the important thing about sharing my career story is that I've worn all of those hats differently at different points in time. I'm sharing the last 10 years of my career because I think it's important. It gives a really great illustration of some of the points that I've made before around the different hats in your career journey, different approaches, and also thinking about your career holistically. So before I graduated in 2011, I was really, really passionate about getting work experience. I went to the University of Manchester, where I studied business and leisure, which people might think, why? Why did you do business and leisure? And the reason for that is because that was actually my first strategic career decision. I knew that I wanted as many options as possible when I graduated. And the business and leisure course that I did enabled you to do work experience 3 times during my 3-year degree. So rather than having a year in industry, it enabled me to do 1 2-week placement, 1 4-week placement, and then 1 10-week placement where I wrote my dissertation. So from a very early point, probably about the age of 17, where I was deciding where to go, I was already thinking about what my career would look like, and I was already making strategic decisions to help me to get there. Now, I was very intentional about picking different experiences to help me to kind of come out of my degree with diverse experiences. So you'll see here that I've put Manchester City Council. I worked at Manchester Council as one of my experiences because I wanted to get a mixture of public sector expertise and also a private sector expertise. I also did some work as a quality assurance tester in the gaming industry. I did some work in property negotiation alongside my degree. And like many people from the age of 16, I got a retail job working in Primark for 3 years. And all of those skills that I gained throughout all of those different experiences really helped me to have a platform, because by the time I graduated with my degree, I probably already had about 6 jobs at that point in different guises. Now, I know that not many people start from this point, but I know that there are some younger people who join Excellerate, that if you're doing your university degree, nothing stops you from doing 2-week placements, internships and things, because it really is a good stepping stone. And that's why I picked up a lot of my skills on customer service, building great relationships. I got very comfortable with change very quickly because I was used to working in different organizations, and it was a really good stepping stone into my career. I also won a Virgin Young Entrepreneur Award for coming up with a really good concept for making student applications easier. So very quickly, I learned that I had a very big knack for problem solving, and I tried to exercise that muscle as quickly as possible. So I mentioned this to say it's never too early to start exercising muscles on different skills that you have and nurturing them for anybody on this call. So I started my career working in Barclays Wealth. I get asked about this a lot, actually, because people ask, did you go into a graduate, I guess, a graduate job? And the answer is no. I actually took a job as a contractor. So I started on a 3-month contract, and I'm at Barclays 10 years later. So that's always a good sign. But I mention this because I think it's a really good option for people who maybe do not feel like they can get into graduate schemes. I couldn't get into any graduate schemes. I didn't do very well through the selection process, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. I think different people have different skills and capability, and doing tests was not one of mine. So going in as a contractor was the right way for me, and I really do advocate this for anybody who can't get on a grad scheme, joining a contracting agency. And I started out working in learning and development, and I feel very lucky very early in my career to have found a role I loved doing from the outset. It really nurtured my creative skills, helped me to nurture my facilitation skills. I love talking, so I learned very quickly how to run training sessions and design them, which I really enjoyed, and I did that for 3 years. I then moved on to another role after that as an assistant vice president, as a data analyst and program manager. Now, I did this job for 6 months because I absolutely hated it. And I talked earlier about not making decisions because you don't like something or because of feelings. And it's important for me to emphasize that I didn't leave that job because I didn't like it. I knew I didn't like it, but I knew I was learning new things. And I really enjoyed that learning process. I learned more about data analysis. I learned more about data reporting. But I learned very quickly that that wasn't where I was going to spend the rest of my career. And I mentioned earlier on about speaking to important stakeholders or influential stakeholders who can help you, because at this point, I'd actually spoken to one of my colleagues and told her that I wanted to become a HR business partner, because I was told that when you work in HR, specializing too early, so working in learning and development with a specialist role, specializing too early can limit your opportunities in the future. So I broadened myself to generalist roles, even though I wasn't CIPD qualified, but I demonstrated my intentions to stakeholders around me that in a few years, this is where I would like to go, and obviously ask them for support and help on how to get there. And what I'll do is I'll revisit that a little bit later on. But once I started the learning and development role and did the data analysis role, I also identified that being a contractor was a very lonely place. I didn't meet a lot of other people my age because I was viewed as an experienced professional. So I decided to start a network at Barclays called Emerge, which was a network for people in the first 5 years of their career. And this, I would say, is probably one of the biggest achievements and biggest platforms for my career, because we started the network in the UK, and within the 1 year, it was the fastest growing network Barclays had ever had. And it grew globally to 4 different continents by the end of that year, and really just made a massive impact. And I mention this because I think intrapreneurship and finding ways to solve problems inside of your workplace is a great way to build new skills. I was able to manage large teams. I was able to manage large budgets. I was able to understand different international nuances, and that's where my passion in love, diversity and inclusion really began. Also, alongside that, I used to co-found something called Young and Connected, which actually started before Emerge. So Young and Connected was something I started with a group of 3 other friends in the industry, and we created a networking platform for people early in their careers. So clearly there's a bit of a trend here about supporting people in their early careers, but it was a real problem I had, and I thought I could solve it. And in solving it for myself, I was able to solve it for others and build some new skills in the process. I also worked with a friend on something called Invest in You, which was all about helping people to balance their corporate lives or busy lives with well-being, which is something that didn't last very long, but we really enjoyed working on in that time. And once again, really helped me to build new relationships, learn how to run events, and it's something that continued to help me with that passion. In addition to that, I was chosen to attend a summit called One Young World, and I was able to go twice. So the first in Johannesburg in 2013, and then also in Dublin in 2014, where I returned as a returning ambassador and was able to run sessions at the summit, which was for 1,900 people. So I was running sessions within the summit for people from different organizations like Unilever, Google, etc., on how to be an entrepreneur, like what we've done with Emerge, essentially teaching people how they could go and do the same in their organizations. And off the back of that, we actually made a huge impact because many other people went on to start their own early career networks with their businesses. So it really saw the rise of early careers networks growing across different industries, and it really felt amazing to be a big part of that. And we also won 2 Barclays Diversity Awards for our network and for the skill and the impact that it had made. In addition to that, for many who know me, I'm from Ghana in West Africa. So I'm really passionate about investing in Ghanaian youth. I came here to England when I was 15. So being able to invest in other people who had similar backgrounds to me was really important. So as you can see, you could probably see that by this point, my career was only kind of 4 years into its maturity, but there was so much I was doing outside of work. And I mentioned this to say that a lot of strategic career moves that you can make are actually outside of your workplace, because it's in gaining a lot of these skills that I was able to amplify the impact at work, because my confidence was building at a pace which was probably faster than many of my peers, because I was doing so much more outside of work. So like I mentioned before, I spoke to a colleague about becoming a HR generalist, and she heard that I wasn't really loving my job very much. And she said, you know what, Winnie, I know someone who's got a HR generalist role. You should go and do it. And that's how I was able to get my job as a HR business partner, which I did for 3 years, and is actually where I met Bacola. And we were able to start Excellerate Black Futures a few years later. But once again, that was a really big strategic career move for me, because I knew that if I wanted to succeed in HR, being a generalist was going to be a very important part of my career pathway. I'm going to try and whiz through the rest of it because of time. But I got married in 2016, and I talk about this because it's really important to know as an individual how your life changes can actually make an impact on your career changes too. Because being married, I also have to think about the impact of my career decisions on my husband and his career and what that looks like. I actually went off at that point and had my first daughter. And the reason I mention this is because when I had my first daughter, I then thought about my career more holistically, and I realized that I loved working in L&D. So I chose to go back into L&D for 4 months. And then I found out that I was pregnant again, completely by surprise. I was 3 months pregnant by that point. And I realized very quickly that I wasn't going to be able to afford childcare for 2 children without a different salary. So at that point, I would probably say I had more urgency in my career and in my progression. And I started to take more risks in my career at that point. And I thought, how can I build my capabilities and skills in a way that enables me to progress without taking me off my career course? And at that point, I took a vice president role in the retail banking network, managing 5 branches. And alongside that, I was also running a couple of small side hustles that I started while I was on maternity leave. So In Its Own Time, which is faith-based, and also Mompreneurs Matter, which was for mums in business. I went on my second maternity leave, and for those who are more career hitchhikers, like I mentioned before, in the pathways, I actually got restructured when I was on maternity leave. So when I came back, instead of managing 5 branches, which is what I was managing before, I came back to managing 14 branches. So as you can imagine, learning to manage, having 2 very young children, now having a team, going from a team of about maybe 30, 40 people to managing a team of over 150 was a very big kind of change for me. But what was great about that is it enabled me to build my business capability, my commercial skills. And that's something I really wanted to build on, because when I was a HR business partner, one of the skills and competencies that were talked about for being successful was building business capabilities. So I knew that even if I wanted to come back into HR eventually, being able to do that role would really help me to amplify the skills and capabilities I had and help me to be competitive compared to other candidates who'd also be looking at roles in that time. I then had the unique opportunity, a role was created to come into Barclays UK, which is the business I'm in now, to lead diversity and inclusion for a business of 20,000 people, which is amazing. I've been doing that now for just under a year. And what I've loved about it is taking all of my leadership skills and capabilities, understanding of different roles in the business, and building a diversity and inclusion strategy that I've really loved to drive and really given me a lot of kind of opportunity to use my passions and skills to do something that's impactful. We also started Excellerate Black Futures. We actually started it last year, but didn't go live till 2021. And I've also this year taken on my ICF coaching accreditation, because coaching is a very big passion of mine. So I'm mindful that was a whistle-stop tour, but I'm going to go through all the lessons that I've learned from my career story, and then, like I mentioned before, some tips that you can hopefully take. So career mistakes I've made. 1, not being clear with mentors and sponsors on how they could help me with my ambitions. So things like asking vague questions, being shy and expecting them to know more about my career than me. It's important that you understand that you take the ultimate ownership, and being able to relay what you need to the people who can help you will be very important. Also, assuming that senior leaders don't have challenges and don't need support from me. Actually, some of the best career moves that I've been able to make are as a result of myself helping leaders to be able to do something impactful. So my learning and development job actually came about, the second one I did, came about from my executive sponsor on Emerge. She had a role in her team and knew of the great work that I'd done doing Emerge, which was nothing to do with my job, and she was more than happy for me to join her team. So it just goes to show the importance of doing things outside of your day role and how it can give you profile and impact in future career opportunities. Also, avoiding self-promotion. I think this is something that a lot of people, especially in the Black community, and also females, avoid doing because of imposter syndrome. But actually celebrating your successes helps other people to know what skills and competencies that you have and what recognition you have that makes you credible, and enables them to approach you when the right opportunities come about. And that looks like LinkedIn posts, and being able to share accreditations on LinkedIn, sharing learning that you've been able to achieve, and also thinking about your business, sharing your impact with your leaders, sharing your impact with different stakeholders so that they're aware of what you're capable of and how you can add value to them. Also thinking working hard would make me successful, and that people would just tap me on the shoulder for promotions. Promotions don't just come out of thin air. And working hard is not all that it's about. It's about balancing, making a strong impact and adding value, working smarter and not harder, but also building the right relationships and sharing your impact in the right way. Also not viewing my professional and career brand as a full picture. So I'm not just Winnie, who's great at learning and development. I'm also Christian, and I'm really proud of the values that gives me. In addition to that, I'm a serial side hustler. I love a good side hustle. And actually, it's been such a journey understanding how to bring that into work, but I wish I'd done that sooner. And I really recommend that if you have a side hustle, let your leaders know about what you're doing, if it's appropriate, and think about how that will amplify the impact that you're making at work. And also making career moves about money or life moments when it was kind of an opportunity to make about fulfillment, cultural fit, and development opportunities. So there might be times when your career is driven by financial needs. We all have financial needs. There is nothing wrong with that. However, that doesn't resonate with the person that's trying to hire you. So really think about what else about the career moves you're making will add value and allow that success and financial success to be a byproduct of more strategic decisions that you're making. And finally, not making the most out of feedback. So not asking proactively for feedback. I now make sure I ask all my stakeholders for feedback at least every 6 months. And I also advise not to get offended by negative feedback, and don't just ignore it and bury your head in the sand. It's so important to make sure that you are taking that feedback on board, using it as people giving you information about your blind spots, and taking action on what you're learning to be able to be a better person in your career as a result of it. So those are the mistakes, and here are my top 10 career tips based on my experiences. So the first, clarity. Make sure that you're clear about your career goals and communicate them with stakeholders that can help. Take ownership, ensure that you are the biggest driver of your career, and make sure that you receive and take support from others along the way. Network. And your network shouldn't just be about senior stakeholders. It should be about safe spaces. Who are your friends that you can trust and really rant to and open up and share your most vulnerable moments. Also your peers. How can you build strong networks of peers? So your operational network is what we call it. Sponsors, mentees, mentors, coaches that can all help you to achieve your goals. I've already talked about peers. Don't underestimate your peer network. They shouldn't be viewed as your competition because they can actually add a lot of value in your career journey. Also, your expertise. Think about the skills that you need for your future career plans and work towards being a subject matter expert, especially if you're looking at that expert box that we've been talking about a bit earlier on. Also, visibility, making sure that you are visible for the work that you're doing, both internally to your organization and externally. being open-minded about your goals and also different pathways that will help you get there. So like I said before, going into retail banking may not have been part of my original career plan, but strategically it helped me to build so many skills and capabilities that make me a more effective leader right now. Also saying yes to new experiences, which ties into that. And also think about how you add value. So back to that CFO box, and making sure that you understand what value your stakeholders need from you and making sure that you're delivering it. But also intrapreneurship and entrepreneurship. What side hustles or internal projects would help you to build your expertise while you work towards new opportunities that will arise? So just to summarize on next steps, here are a few things that you can literally do when you leave the call today to help make more strategic career moves. So the first is complete the free Career Intelligence Academy scorecard. For those who are signed up to our mailing list, you would have got access to that in our July newsletter. We will send it out again in the August newsletter. So if you've missed it, then please look out for it. It's a free quiz and it helps you to understand how much ownership you are taking of your own career. Create a career plan. In our August newsletter, we will also share a career plan template. So please complete it and think strategically about where you want your career to be in the next 1 to 3 years to help you to focus the decisions you make to help you to get there. Also create a development plan. We've already got a template that we shared after the Bacola session in February on managing your performance. If you haven't done that session or listened back to it, it's available on our YouTube channel. It will help you to understand how to use feedback in the right way and how to develop yourself and manage your performance to make sure that you're adding value to your stakeholders. And also finally, find a sponsor or a mentor. Those are two different things. Your sponsor is someone who's going to help you to get to those strategic career moves that you're desiring. So they will physically help you to make the right moves, whilst a mentor gives you guidance, support, and advice along the way. So that's my 4 tips on next steps. I'm going to stop at this point. I'm mindful I've talked a lot, and I would love to take any questions that are on anybody's mind.
Well, firstly, thank you, Winnie. I know that was a whistle-stop tour, but I took loads of notes. I'm sure everyone else did. We've actually got quite a few questions to get through, so I'll kick off if you don't mind. So we've got a question from Timothy who says, what's the ideal balance between planning your future career path and focusing on being the best you that you can be currently for your employer?
That's a really good question. And I think for me, if you're doing your strategic career planning in the right way, you should be able to do both concurrently. So if you think about where your career goals are in the next 1 to 3 years, being able to look at the skills and competencies you need will help you develop your current role. So to give you an example, I've mentioned the fact that I'm in diversity and inclusion now, and I think a little part of me has always loved the idea of being in D&I, but being able to think about actually 4 or 5 years ago, I wasn't working in diversity and inclusion, but I was able to build program management skills. I was able to build understanding of the millennial group. So at least when I started this role in gender as well, when I started this role, I was a lot further in the skill set I needed than most were. So I would say if you're doing it the right way and you think about where your kind of next 1 to 3 year goal will be, understanding the skills and competencies that you need to get there is something that you can develop while you're in your current role without compromising your future steps, if that makes sense.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Vinny. Kelly is saying, what would be the approach to build up a portfolio career? She's suggesting, is it just the experts or have you got any tips?
That's a very good question, Kelly. For me personally, I always like to say I'm the queen of portfolio careers because I haven't met anybody who's got a more diverse CV than I have, but I'm willing to find out more. I would say to you, think about the skills and capabilities that you want to be known in, and think about that being a golden thread throughout your career. So for me, I've always been passionate about helping people grow and develop. And you'll notice across my career path that everything I've done has been linked to that in some way. So I would say to you that making a strategic portfolio career is not about lots of moves. it's actually about thinking about the golden thread that all of those moves continue to build on, what skills or capabilities. And I think that also helps with that expert piece. And in which case, if you're approaching it that way, it doesn't matter if you go lateral, if you go linear, or if you go around a mix of both, because that golden thread will always stay the same. So I think thinking about, what am I really good at? What do I want to be known for in 10 years as an expert in? Or if people, wanted to find someone who was good at this thing, what would it be? And use that as the golden thread in which you make all of your career decisions.
Well, and I guess that answers Kelly's question, because she was asking around how do you move from one approach to another based on your circumstances. So I guess it's that constant thread. So that answers that question.
Exactly.
Exactly. Keith has got a really good one. So how do you move from being a passenger in your career journey to a driver when your next move is heavily reliant on the organizational structure?
So great question, Keith. And the simple answer to that is make a decision. So the fact that an organization changes doesn't mean that every decision has to be taken out of your hands, right? So the way I see it is an organization can choose to change the structure, and that means that your role may therefore either fall away or fall into a different team. Now, you don't have to stay in that team forever. If that massively derails you from your career plan, being able to have that career plan helps you to go back and look at almost a kind of mental decision tree. Does this job help me to reach my aspirations? Where is it a disadvantage and where is it an advantage? And actually having an advantage in that career change tells you, actually, you know what, even if they moved me and I was a passenger in this journey, I am making an active decision to stay on it, in which case you're still in control. However, if you just choose the decisions to happen to you, that's also a choice. I actually think a lot of people think being a passenger is about not making any decisions. Actually, the truth is you're making a decision to just not do anything about it. So I would say to you that stuff that happens outside of your control doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be in control. It's just a circumstance that you have to then go back and review your career plan against and think about what your next strategic move is, or even if it is strategically staying where you are, that's still a strategic decision that you've purposely made and taken control of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, perfect. Rebecca's got a question around your side hustles, Winnie. So what are some of your side hustles and how do you manage to bring these into your different roles?
So I've shared a little bit about all the different side hustles, and you can see that some of them are more relevant to my jobs and some aren't. So I'll give you an example. In Its Own Time is a Christian organization that's aimed at empowering Christian women. I also sell a lot of slogan t-shirts. Everybody who knows me knows I love affirmations and slogan tees. And in a lot of cases, that's not relevant to work. So I may not talk about that as much at work. However, I'm very strong and awareness that the skills and capabilities that I'm building running a business helps me to grow at work. Whereas Mompreneurs Matter is actually a concept that I pitched at work, because I really wanted my company to understand the value that mompreneurs added, and it was actually directly relevant to their business. So actually being able to cross that over added value. In the same way I work in diversity and inclusion now, and talking about Excellerate Black Futures is also demonstrating that I've got capabilities outside of work that pertain to managing diverse talent. So actually that makes me stronger. So I think to your question, Rebecca, it's about understanding which side hustles are relevant to your day job and looking for links to bring them into your workplace.
Awesome. Another question from Kelly asking around feedback every 6 months and if there was a survey for stakeholders. I think a quick response to that, not that I'm plugging myself, but is have a watch of the performance session that we had in February, because that actually goes a little bit in depth in terms of feedback.
Definitely.
And there's one model on there in terms of questions to ask. So just take the time to have a look at that. We actually had a couple of people ask around mentors and sponsors. So advice on how to find the right mentor or sponsor. And an additional question, is it good to have more than one, either mentor or sponsor?
That's a great question, Uliana. So finding the right mentor is once again more helpful or easier to do when you have a career plan. So to the point I made earlier, if you understand where you want to be in 3 years, you probably want to find a mentor who has been there already. So that's the first thing. So having clarity helps you to identify one. And yes, you can have as many mentors as you want and can manage. So just thinking about picking the right people to help you to get there. And usually I would say it's about people who've walked the path that you're walking on. I always say people can't help you if they don't know the path that you're trying to take. So it's really important. And sometimes it might not be about the job that they've done. It's about the skills and competencies they've built along the way and how they did that. But not knowing what you want to achieve does not help for making strategic decisions about mentors.
Awesome. Thanks, Winnie. Anne-Marie wants to know, you mentioned about balancing well-being and career. What are your top tips?
Oh, I could be better at this bit. So Pola's laughed because she knows. But I would say, think about what works for you. I actually find that having work and life more fluid helps me to balance more interchangeably. And I actually seek out experiences that enable me to have a better work-life balance. But I would say schedule time for rest. I'm the kind of person, if I don't book time to do things, it doesn't get done. So in the same way you book your meetings and book time to get your work done, book your time for rest is the biggest tip I would give.
Absolutely. It's about being intentional, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
Last question for you, Winnie. What would you recommend someone to do outside of work to build their portfolio?
I think it depends on what your career ambitions are. So it's never going to be a one-size-fits-all approach. And if people want to know, we do have a session in January from Lorraine Wright on side hustling, which is really good to go back and listen to. She talks about looking at problems that you want to solve and where your passions are. But then we've also got a session on intrapreneurship that we ran in March. So those are both really good to look at for thinking, actually, do I want to start a side hustle, or do I want to start something inside of my workplace? In which case, think about what you're passionate about and think about what skills and competencies you want to gain. And that will help give you better direction. And if you do have more questions, find me on LinkedIn and let's have an individual chat, and I'll be more than happy to help.
Amazing. We got through all the questions. I don't think I've missed any. A power hour, if there ever was one. We've literally got 1 minute left. I want to say a huge thank you to Winnie. Thank you so much. I talk to her almost every day, but I've been making notes. So huge thank you. And thank you to you all for joining. And then most importantly, thank you to the rest of the team. All of us do this we run on passion, I like to say. So it's all volunteers, just a bunch of people who love what we do and trying to give back as much as possible. So a huge thank you to everyone. If you've got further questions or you want to get involved, find us on LinkedIn. We're always happy to have a chat. So thank you very, very much all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.